Excellent. Okay, everybody. Oops. Hold on, one more thing I gotta do. All right. Thanks everyone for coming. Yay, we did it. I was out of town. I was in Italy and I was like, I gotta put something together this month. So everybody is so gracious to come and be here. And this is an exciting topic. So I think this is something that we definitely need to talk about. I get a lot of questions about it. And I've only had an illustration agent. So I can talk about that, but I can't talk about having a service design agent. And I was like, well, I know plenty of people who have agents. Let me grab them. Let's see if they're available and let's get together and have a discussion about it. I honestly, I don't think I've actually seen this conversation happen before. So I thought this would be a really good one. Kind of answer people's common questions and maybe debunk some myths. So I think this will be a good panel for that. So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you artist friends for being here today with me. This is going to be fun. And I guess we'll just get started. I'd love to have everyone introduce themselves, and we can start. Well, just randomly pick somebody. Stephanie, tell actually everyone if you can introduce yourself, and also tell us, if you're with an agent, if you don't mind mentioning the agency you're with, how long you've been represented, and yeah, just more about yourself.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Stephanie Ryan, and I am with MHS Licensing, and I've been with them since 2012. So
You've had
licensing,
a lot of time in licensing
I've
with
had a
an
lot of
agent.
time in licensing,
Mhm.
yeah. And that's how back in the days of Surtex, that's where I met Janetta and I met Nicole. And yeah, so I've been doing it for a while, and licensing is still the primary part of my business. That's kind of where I get paid and make my money the most. And then I guess the last handful of years, definitely after 2020, things started to change a lot in the industry. Just surtax going away has been a huge thing. And so around 2020, I started to diversify my business a little bit more. So I teach courses, I paint, I sell art, whatever, getting into more POD kind of things and just diversifying my business. But licensing is still my primary source of income.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you. All
Yeah.
right, I'm going to go in order as I see you guys. Juliet.
Hi, everybody. I'm Juliet Meeks. I do have an agent now. I didn't have an agent for about 7 years. And then about 2 years ago, I joined Wayne's World, which is run by Liz Wayne. And her agency is relatively new, but she has a long history of experience in the licensing world, from artist to consultant and now agent. And yeah, so I primarily at the moment am licensing my work, but I'm getting ready to open up my online shop again, which I'm excited about, to offer more paintings and ornaments again, now that I'm back in my studio after we renovated our house. And I also do some online education. I've taken a little bit of a break from that, but I'm going to find my way back, maybe in a different form, in that later this year or next year.
Great, thank you. Thanks for being here. Nicole.
Hi guys, I'm Nicole Tamarin, and I have been licensing since 2000 and gosh, I don't even remember. I don't know, something. I feel, Steph, was I doing it when I met you? Like, were you with MH 2000?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
2011,
2012.
2000,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the first Surtex, but I think I had walked the year before and you were there, so
Okay. Yeah.
2011-ish.
So
Yeah.
2012, I think, was my first. So I was in the licensing world without actually having other art experience as a job. Did that on my own until 2016 was my last solo show, and I joined with Courtney Davis, who some people have heard of. A lot of people haven't. They are I I think 40-year veteran in the industry. And but I'm always surprised that people haven't heard of that name because they're not kind of like an online presence. I do teach, I call it my side hustle. I don't teach online and I don't teach licensing, but I teach at my alma mater at Massachusetts College of Art in Boston. And I simply love the kids. And they're actually, ironically, at this point, the same age as my daughter. So it's kind of like a little thing I get to hold on to. So I love talking with people and sharing what I do and just kind of connecting with other creatives. But for me, licensing is a very full-time income. I just hired somebody part-time in September of last year. So I'm not quite a year in trying to figure that leg of things out. But I'm so glad to see you guys.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for being here. I haven't seen all of you in a while, so this is like
Been a
really nice. I haven't
while.
talked to you, so this is really great. Amaryllis.
Hey everyone, this is fun. Yes, I have been in licensing for, I don't know, I can point back like everybody else has done to my first booth, right? So my first Surtex was in 2017. I had been doing like more like freelance illustration, book covers, spot editorial type stuff before that, and teaching online has been a good half of my business. So now I have a membership called Watercolor Bold, where it's just about painting on the regular, and then Watercolor Build is about putting it into Photoshop and making designs. So in terms of licensing, I started out in 2012, I think, signed on with one of the bigger agencies. So I make a distinction between agency and agent, and that's not anything you need to take home with you. It's just like how I frame the size. So this was kind of like a glorified Shutterstock for artists, so to speak. So you have those kind of agencies, and then you have agents that are like real people. And although there are real people on both types, and I had my own person that I was assigned to, and we corresponded. It's, you know, when you're talking about 3 dozen artists to an agency, that's very different than my experience. But I was with them for 3 years, had to cool off with all my clients after breaking that contract for a year, built up my portfolio, and then went and did trade shows. So that's kind of how that worked out. I look back on it as more of a getting paid to get to learn kind of experience. And now I've been licensing on my own, and my clients have definitely dwindled since shows have stopped, as some other people have mentioned. But my biggest client is Moda Fabrics, and that's a good half of my income.
Good stuff. Oh, you've actually jumped ahead to some of our questions. Thank you. Thanks. And my story, I started doing art licensing trade shows in 2013. That's where I met some of you all. And I did Surtex 2013, 2014, and with a group. So I was in a collective. I came back on my own in 2016 and did the show. And then I also did 2 blueprint shows after that, and 2 or 1, 2, and 1 a virtual one and 1 in person in San Francisco. And then, but so yeah, I've been licensing probably since 2013. I had an illustration agent up until just a year ago. I was with them for about 2.5 years. And I got editorial work through them. So magazine illustration, book portraits and illustrations. I would say publications like the LA Times and New York Times. I would work with them on that. So not surface design, but I was doing editorial work through them. And we're no longer together. So I am a free agent right now, literally. So yeah, and that's I work solo. So that's my story. And I do licensing, and I haven't been doing any editorial in a while, but I'm primarily doing licensing, coaching, which is a big part of what I do, and one-on-one, and I'm here with you guys today. So I definitely like to build community and also just, hang out with my artist friends, because I think it's important, community, especially as an artist, to have community, right? Because we need that, especially when we're working solo. It's hard. It's hard to do it by yourself, right? You don't have all the answers. So that's my story. Thanks, everybody. It's going to be good. There's so much information to come out of this. My first question is, how did you land your agent? I'm going to just jump around. It's Juliet. Since you're newer, I guess, to the agencies, how did that happen for you? And just tell us like how prepared you were, or how were you looking for one? And and how long were you pursuing licensing before? Like, what made you do it?
Yeah. So I first started out in about 2015, and I was not looking for an agent at all. I think I was actually kind of not like against the concept, but I was just always like, I can do this on my own. Like, I don't want an agent. I don't need an agent. And then, when I started teaching online, my time was just really getting sucked into that. And I was like, okay, I need some help on the licensing side of things. So I started maybe opening up to it in my mind. But Liz reached out to me via Instagram. And then I was like, no, for like a year. And then I interviewed her for my class. So we just kind of continued to get to know each other. And then I finally was like, you know what, let's do it. Like, I'm spending so much time teaching online that I like wasn't able to focus as much time as I wanted on the licensing. So that for me was kind of one of my main motivators to sign on with the agency, have someone helping me like do all the time sucking task, which is just dealing with contracts and marketing and all that. And then it's funny because then I took a break from online education. And so now I'm putting a lot of energy into licensing and into the agency. So things kind of flipped a bit. But yeah, I will say, as far as how prepared I felt, it's interesting because when you sign on with an agent, I feel like all of their processes are different. And you also have to have like my portfolio. I had a ton of art, from 7 years. So I had to really organize, and it was just a lot of like setup with the agency, moving everything onto their, portfolio system, and then renaming every piece of art with new art IDs, and then just all the onboarding stuff that goes with it. So that was like the most time consuming, but I do feel like having those years of experience before, having a style that I felt like I knew was my own, really helped prepare me for having an agent, like, 7 years in. So I
That's
think
great.
that was
So you were prepared. It's
yeah.
Your preparation met opportunity, or however that's called. That's awesome. Nicole, I know I was there. I was on the phone with you when you were literally contemplating getting an agent.
Imploding. Similar to I had no intentions of having an agent. And in fact, I really truly thought I would at some point in my career transition into being an agent. So I was at those trade shows. I will always say that's my best version of myself when I'm on the trade show floor. Hugely confident in that capacity. Probably more confident about telling other people about other people's work. People already thought I was an agent, that I was multiple artists. It was kind of weird. But I genuinely, same. What are they going to do that I can't do for myself? Like, I can sell myself the best. And I always thought that I was the big selling point, because we all do art, right? So we all do art, but I'm very right, left brain. So I always thought my selling point was the way I had kind of made my money prior, because I had never made my money prior doing art. So that was not my confidence. Like, that's not the hill I'm going to die on. I'm going to die on like all that other practical stuff. So I had absolutely no like blinders. And honestly, unfortunately, only stories I had heard of people with agents, like, not that there weren't good ones, but you'd always hear the horror stories of like the aftermath of having an agent. And I was like, oh, I'm not doing that. And so I really had no intention of that. But things like life has a really weird way of working things out. I wasn't looking for someone, but I was friends with a lot of agents because we all are on the same floor. I was always learning from the agencies. And I kind of had like a little bullet point list in the back of my head, like if I was going to ever do something, but it was kind of like way back. And then my agency, I literally told my agent Kate about, like, she talked to me for the first time on the floor, and I told her all of this about me going to be an agent kind of thing. And she stopped and she said, all great artists at some point in their career, their time is best spent doing art. And I had never thought about it that way. And I don't think I really needed to think about it in that way. And same, it took me a full year before I didn't even think about reaching out again. And then ironically, I was going to meet with them. My agency does not do trade shows. Before trade shows stopped being a thing, they stopped. And she called me out of the blue while I was thinking about it a year later. And I thought that was really weird. And I imploded because I had not made it on my own. And Stephanie actually said, Nicole, are you for real crying about Courtney Davis? And I was like, yeah, no. So it was a huge adjustment. It was a very difficult adjustment. But they approached me as well. So I had been in, again, 6.5 years on my own, no plans. And then, sometimes you just like get really like something comes in and you're just like, maybe this is the next step. So I took the leap, and that was a full 8 years ago, which is kind of wild.
8 years. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Change is scary. Change is freaking scary. And especially, I'm going to jump around a little bit because I want to keep this a little bit flowy. And I want everyone to talk. So I'm going to be a little ADD right now. I like where this is going, what you're saying about that, because making that decision, I think for me, that's giving up that control, giving the control of my clients and the work that I can take, and having somebody else manage that for me and dictate, and talk for me and represent me, as well as take 50%, right? That scares the crap out of me. I'm gonna hop over to Amaryllis. How do you feel about all the, like, what is your apprehension, if there is any, or what is it that, that keeps you agentless?
Well, what's funny is, as I was listening to everybody, I was thinking like the hardest thing about having an agent is losing your agency, which is your, like, I don't know, personal authority or freedom to choose. And that is definitely a big thing. I remember, kind of echoing what Nicole said in hearing about the aftermath of people leaving their agents. I had a conversation with an artist who said she was like, I got a little too long in the tooth to be taking orders. And I had to Google that, what that meant. But yeah, as you get older, that's what it means. It's hard to take orders. And I think what it comes down to, and what Juliet was talking about, is that it comes down to having, like, you lose some of that agency in order to have more clarity. And so, like, what do you want your brain space to be? Is it, the fun of the hustle? I think if anybody is in this industry, you have to have somewhat, maybe not entirely, but somewhat of an entrepreneurial spirit. And you are kind of giving that up to a large extent to an agent, because sometimes you don't even get to interface with the clients depending on what kind of a relationship you have with your agency, so, or their terms or how they work. So that is hard, but actually the flip of that would be, somewhat correlating, is that one of my apprehensions is with my Christian values. I'm not sure I want to do everything that an agent sends my way, and I don't want to have that conversation of like, no, thank you, because that's money lost for them. And I'm sure that that's something that we could broach on the front end. Another thing, of course, as you were talking about, Janetta, the money aspect. And then I'm cool with like splitting a commission with new companies, because you did that work, that's literally a commission, right, for getting the work. But I have a hard time giving up the reins to existing clients and sharing in that profit.
I will say though, too, I think there are different, we all know this, there's a lot of different agencies. And like, when we think about that idea, you said that thing about taking orders. that is a very interesting thing because like you split 50-50 and those people are your partners. And I think one of the, like, I will just, I think there's actually a couple of us here that are Virgos. So there's like a control. Yeah. Like there's a bunch of us, my little Virgo people. So we have this control piece that's like, nobody can do it like us. And in fact, we probably have our own process for it, which might be wrong, but it freaking works for us. So yeah, giving that up is insane. But when you give up 50%, you're also giving up 50, like you have a partner. So it's not just giving up, it's like taking on a partner. So if you think about getting married and you have a partnership, I think sometimes it's not agent employee. That's not necessarily what you're taking on. It's you're taking on a partner who has equal risk and success with your success as an artist. And so, and by the way, that's not everybody. And Alice, you also had an entree to this, which was not that experience. And I think that's a very, very real concern of like, you know, that doesn't work for you, right? Like, so never again. And so you will be hyper vigilant with like,
yeah, it was more of like, especially preparing for shows, she was talking about just, and I could see with this particular group that they were given like, you're given a list of collections we're going to work towards and build this. And it was more like, I'm giving you like 20 plus occasions to fill and to have something to show for. And I think those are two different requests right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the one of the things is for anyone that's newer to the agent world, and Steph, I don't know what to classify MHS at. Honestly, I feel like they're a little bit of a bridge, but there's boutique agencies, which is what Juliet.
Oh, yes. Speak on this. Speak on this. This is, I love where this is going. I'm kind of having you guys just talk it out. Yeah, this is stuff I don't even know. So what are the different types of agencies? It's a great question. And what is it that, what they do that differentiates them?
Yeah, so I will speak on a boutique agency, which is that I have 3 agents, and there are probably, I want to say 10 full-time people. Maybe we have a couple more, but I would say there's probably 8 to 10 of us that are full-time. And the reason I call that boutique is that we're a really small group. None of us cross over in style. We might fit in between 2 different people, but everyone has their own lane. And so it's boutique because it's small. It's like, it's little and it's small and it's very full service. So that's also where 50% comes in. It's a full service on my side and it's a full service for our client side, but all of it's really small, personable. Like if I need to like pick up the phone and get someone on the phone, I just do that like just now. Like I don't have to like send in, I'm speaking to somebody multiple times.
Did we lose her? We lost her. Okay, we'll get her back. That's okay. We'll keep the conversation going. Stephanie, tell us about how you got started with your agent.
Okay. First, if my sound goes in and out, I'm really sorry. I'm having issues with my mic.
Okay.
So I first got started again back in
real quick, Nicole's back. Nicole, we'll get back to you.
Back?
Sorry, you're in midstream.
No, go ahead, because I didn't even start.
Stephanie. Oh,
no, go.
Oh, okay. Go for it. Go, Nicole.
Finish your thought.
Nicole, can you hear us?
I'm fine. I was just saying so we're just a small agency. It means it's like it's tiny and it's full service. So the reason I wanted to actually ask Steph what you would classify MHS, because I feel like they still have that same personal level, but it's a larger group of artists. So I guess I wouldn't know how you would classify them. Because there's big guys that are like I said, I love Amaros when you said the Google or the Shutterstock of like licensing, because there's definitely that large.
Is Shutterstock still a thing? Like, I don't know if I just dated myself there.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many artists MHS has now. It's got to be 24 maybe. I haven't looked in a really long time. Then they're always bringing on new artists. They have kind of an interesting thing where they have like their whole wildlife part of their business where they signed with like all those really big wildlife artists and they make tons of money on that side of the business. And then they have their art licensing with artists more like surface pattern design and more like everybody here. And then they do consulting as well. So they have this kind of diverse business. But there's only 5 agents there. And I work with 2 really the most. And so it's the same as Nicole. If I need anything, I just pick up the phone and call them or text them. We are in contact as much as I want to be in contact. So we'll go through periods of time where I talk to them all the time. And then other times where my head is someplace else and I pull back and they're okay with that too. So I totally agree with Nicole where it is this partnership and you kind of get out of it what you put into it and what you want from it. And MHS has always been really great with me that way, where they'll tell me what they're looking for, what they may need, what's out there, but it's up to me if I want to do it or not.
That's great. Actually, that was part of something I wanted to ask all of you. Like, how do you work, Juliet? How do you work with your agent? Is it do you have 1 agent or 2 agents at the agency that you always? Is it just Liz? Yeah, and what is that relationship like? And on the day-to-day or even throughout the year, what kind of responsibilities do you have or expectations do they have of you? And this is for all of you too. After she answers, I do want to know, like, what is the culture like and what are the
Yeah.
expectations like?
So it's funny because Wayne's World does have, I think, about 24 artists, but Liz is the only agent. So that's interesting that, MHS has multiple agents. But yeah, so you can basically meet with her as much as you want. So we meet weekly, and kind of just talk about current projects that, when I came to her, she had, her own built-in client base, and then I kept all of my old clients separate. So that's kind of interesting that you can potentially.
Really, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
That is really nice to hear because I don't hear that often, that you get to keep your clients. So you have your own house clients, and you just continually maintain your own relationships with them. It's separate, like the
Yes.
business they bring you. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
basically like I had a whole list built into my contract. And then a lot of them like I don't really work with anymore, but I just put them on the list just in case. And then basically if I wanted to, hand it over to her, then she gets that 50% and she manages it, I can. And I think I did that with one. And then I feel like she's very fair and just like, if that was the client that you earned, she the contract I felt like was very fair. But as far as like our process, I think that might be probably in general for a lot of people, the most difficult thing, especially if you are very independent, is going into this agency and coming up with essentially a whole new process, a way of working. And it's definitely an adjustment. So I'm 2 years in. And I think what's really important is that you like the agent that you work with because like I work with her very closely. She is also a Virgo. So I feel like we do get each other. And sometimes the pace of the agency is higher than the pace that I might normally work. So that for me is like trying to like be like, look, I want to be able to like make so many things and have a new collection every single month, but that's just not my like style of of working. So but she's, I feel like, open to like an understanding of you being like, look, this is just the way it's going to be. And she's like, all right, she works with so many different people. I honestly don't know how she does it because like she meets with so many artists, I think weekly, maybe even some of them bi-weekly, I don't know. And then there's so many different personalities. So she does have an assistant or a couple of assistants, and maybe she's going to hire more people to help her. But yeah, so for me, it's just like, especially just if you have stuff going on in your personal life and you're like, oh, like I want to be able to respond to this request. Like I want to be able to create art for this because it would be really cute, but you just can't do all the things. And so that's for me is the hardest thing, is like getting really focused and strategic on like, here's the art I want to make. This is the collection I want to do. And seeing if it can apply to like many of the clients that the agency has and help it license across multiple product categories. So that's kind of like, I think how she likes to work with her artists is help you do that. And did
That's
I
great.
miss a question?
Yeah, no, this is really helpful. Did you have to have a certain amount of work when you started? Did she
I
require
don't
you to
think that she is very picky about that, because I've seen her take on newer artists that don't seem to have huge portfolios, but they have a very defined style. And I think that's definitely a major myth. Is like, I have to have 100, 200 pieces of art to either license my art or get an agent. And it's really more like, if you had 10 pieces of art that are like, whoa, that's different. Whoa, that's really unique to you. And it makes sense what your voice and perspective is. I think that is really more important.
That's good to hear. Yeah, because it seems like, and I'm just kind of interviewing all you guys, because I don't know anything about this. And I just hear, like Nicole said, a lot of horror stories. Which is, I'll talk to a friend, they're like, this happened, and I'm like, oh gosh, right? I'm like, I'm sorry, So there are those horror stories, like and you do hear them. Like, they take your existing clients and you have to give up control, and you have 50% of everything that you've been already earning. And I know for me, that is a concern, because right now that is like my core clients are my core clients and my income. And if I were to take on an agent, I feel like, okay, I just gave up 50% of my income, or that income from the surface design clients. And now they have to replace that. And then they have to give me profit on top of that.
I will
So
also say, Jay, though, when you start with an agency, you have that conversations. Like, still to this day, which kind of shocks me, I have one client that I have kept and actively kept. But when you do that contract, like Juliet said, just like if you were going to have sort of an addendum to anything, you have a client list that's considered your client list, and that's a conversation. So for me, I had been in the industry for almost 7 years, 6, 7 years. And so I had built up something that had already turned me full-time income. So when I met with them, that was the conversation, is we had to go through my existing client list, and basically, weirdly, it's like a divorce, right? It's like a marriage, and then you got to divorce your other stuff. So you got to go through the belongings and say, like, who's going to take ownership of what. So I have kept, I kept a smaller list. I would say I kept probably 8 clients that were mine only. And mostly it's because they didn't work with them already. So if they are, there's only so many, there's 1,000 companies, but there's only so many that actually are earners. And so if they were part of that system, I kind of had to, despite how I met them and despite how much I worked with them, that had to go to them to manage. But everything else was kind of a discussion. So yeah, same idea. Like, they can manage them if they wanted, and most of those I just kept. And but what's interesting is, about being 8 years in, is I'm only working with one of those now. Surely because it's hard to manage all of that and the needs of the agency. So, but I still kept that one client of mine is still my top earner, which I find really interesting, because my focus on them has actually gone down as I've moved forward. But I'm really glad I kept that client, and I continue to foster that. And so I don't think it's always off the table that you just, like, it's never all or nothing. Everything's contracts, as we know, even with companies that you work with. Like, it's just about a negotiation. So anything that feels uncomfortable to you, because we're all individuals and all the companies are individual. So anything that feels not comfortable is, like, some people can work freelance all they want, but then the licensing route is this other method. Some people do children's books, and it's not under their agency. Like, my agency doesn't even handle publishing at all. It's just licensed for products. So it's like, I think whatever the hangups that we have as individuals, those are usually things that can be worked out ahead of time in terms of a contract. And then there's other agencies that they'll just say, nope, this is my non-negotiable. We take these clients, and, like, my non-negotiable might be, well, I need to still be able to freelance. And I think it is a hard transition. And I think for me specifically, it was easier to make a transition keeping the one client that was my big client. But, like, for instance, fabric as a category, that was literally next to the day I signed a contract. They called up my company and cut my contract short for fabric, because it would hinder growth and where the whole business was going to travel. So I think it's just something I'd like to mention, because it's not an and all, or like, we only do this thing. Like, you just have to have that conversation of, like, what is the need on both sides, and come out with something that feels like mutually beneficial.
That's good. I mean, I would hope that they would be, if they really want you, they'd be open to negotiating all the things and talking out all your concerns, right? When you start. Yeah, and I think it's really just what I'm understanding, it's really just up to you, right? To make that final decision to be like, okay, what are my non-negotiables? And you know, are my needs being met? Does this feel like a good fit? And it seems like you can work with an agent for even just maybe like 18 months, like a trial thing. I know you guys are kind of, are you locked in for a long time? You just keep renewing every 2 or 3 years? Like, how does that look like for you? And what are the exit terms? Because exit terms could be really scary. And I've heard some really scary things about that too. Yeah, Stephanie, what do you, how does
Yeah,
that work
right.
for you? Because you've been there a
I
long
think,
time.
yeah, it's been a long time. And I think at this point, we are just kind of like, it's just open. It's like month to month kind of thing where we are in this, long-term contract. And if I want to get out of it, I can. But MHS will own those companies for a period of time. So I won't be able to license with the companies that they have contracts with. So if I ever did decide to leave, I would need to have my other, streams of income coming in, and I can start reaching out to other companies, which I haven't licensed to. So that is the only thing about my contract. But there were years ago when I went to them and I was like on the fence about leaving, we renegotiated things. So like when I first signed with them, I kept some of my clients, which it was so long ago that it doesn't even matter anymore. They've probably taken it over at this point. And there was a point where, we renegotiated and I like the only thing that they're going to license is stuff that I give to them. And if I want to take art someplace else and do things with it, I can. So I just need to have conversations with them. They're very open to me having freedom to do things with my art. So
Are there
uh,
certain kinds of projects that you can't do on your own, that, because I've heard also that, oh, I can't work with this kind of freelance project falls under them, so
Yeah.
they have to take 50% of my freelance project, or this particular kind of freelance project. Is there any overlap in other things that you do that
no,
they might
I
have ownership of?
I really have like no complaints or restrictions for that kind of stuff. And even for books, they don't do it. So if I wanted to get a book deal, I would go out and get like literary agent, which takes much less of a percentage. So they're really great. I have a lot of freedom in
That's good. That's good to hear. Juliet or Nicole, do you guys have any restrictions, or is there any weird exit terms or anything you want to share that might be of a concern, but something that you've worked out?
I think all agencies have an exit clause. Most of them, I know for my agency, because I've also been with them for several years, so we don't like re-sign contracts. There was never a minimum of time that I had to stay, but there is, and I think that would just progress forward. It was something like a math thing, like if you the amount of months I was with them, they had like double that to still shop the art with a maximum, which is what I'm probably at now, right? Because I've been there for full 12 months. So it's really what that is probably, it's like a 3 to 6 month cool off period. And what that mostly is that they have already submitted art. Like, let's say I wanted to leave in January, we had this conversation. They have submitted art. They may not be hearing back on that art until like March or April or May or June. So it's that it kind of gives them the full breadth of how to show art. And oddly, one of the reasons I think I felt pretty comfortable signing with them is I knew one of their artists that I always had loved. And I contacted her to find out what her experience was with them. And it turned out she had already left them. And it was such a different conversation, but it made me feel really good, which is that and even now I'm watching an artist who has been there for a while, and I'm watching what that looks like on the other end. And what is really nice, and I think what gave me a lot of confidence about signing with them, is that it was such a respectful thing. And they're not here to tie your hands. They want you to succeed and make money. And if it's not happening at the agency, everyone knows it. And so what benefit of is it to like hold your art? Like there's just no benefit to anyone to lock you down from making money with it. So yes, there's an exit clause, but it's for a very practical reason. And then yeah, same with me. I wouldn't be able just to like pick up and start working with the companies. Like I'd just be like, oh, see ya. But at the same time, you have to also to look at
Oh, there you
the
are.
length of the relationship goes far beyond me. Do I keep going in and out? It's annoying.
That's great. No, that's good to know. Yeah, Juliet, do you have a certain
Yeah.
amount of time that you're with them, and how does that look? What does that look like?
We, you know, I don't know how she's signing on new artists now, but initially we were going to do 3 years, and I asked if we could do 2 years to just be sure. And so then the 2 years came and went, and then we renewed for another 3 years. And I think, you know, I think any good agent isn't going to want some sort of messy breakup. So with her, I believe the way it is like if I were to leave, all the art that we created for her client specifically, you know, would continue to be shared. And then I think I would even have the option to potentially work with her current clients, but just on new art that she didn't work with me on, or, you know, wasn't a part of in any way. So I feel like that was like extra generous. So that's nice. And so I feel comfortable that even though, yeah, we renewed for 3 years, if something were to happen and I was like, I'm just can't do this anymore or whatever, I think she would, you know, talk to me and we could end it early. You know, I don't want to at this moment in time, but I think it's something that she would work with me on. So that's nice because I have heard horror stories. I heard of one artist who wanted to leave and she had to pay the agency like thousands of dollars to be able to leave. I'm like, so all those kinds of stories definitely turned me off because I had heard only horror stories before I signed on with an agent. So Liz had her work cut out for her to, you know, convince me.
Yeah, I think I would be the same as you if I had a conversation with an agent. I have a lot of concerns. Amaryllis, I have not forgotten about you. Actually, you're because you don't have an agent either. Are there any questions you want to ask everyone that I haven't brought up? Is there anything on your mind?
I do, and I will after this little story. So I remember when I got when I signed with the agency that I did in, I don't know, 2010, 12, somewhere around there, 14, 12. I'm gonna land at 12. And I told my mother-in-law, who is just a cheery Midwestern woman. And I remember standing outside of TJ Maxx, which is so ironic, but she was like, we're gonna be rich. And I think that that's like such a misnomer. So I would say that some of the things that we believe about having an agent is that I'm going to make so much more money. And I'm not saying that you won't. I'm just saying, like, my theory, and that's where my question comes, is that you end up spending, so you're just outsourcing the amount of time that you use in sourcing clients and put that towards creating art. But time wise, there's a shift. Money wise, if you're thinking about like spending the same amount of time, you're kind of in the same ballpark. Now you can grow with an agent and you can grow without an agent. So that's not really the question. I think that the question is, one, the quality of the relationship you have and how much you hate doing certain tasks. And so I don't want to say that, you know, I'm like a no way agent person. I'm open to it, but I just haven't had that love connection. And I think one way to talk to agents is that a lot of them offer these like portfolio review coaching calls. And I've done that and found that was not a love connection. You know, just interfacing over the art and hearing what they have to say and just how they come across. But my question, I guess, to you guys would be that, like, I don't know, that time and money ratio that I think it kind of comes down to, particularly when I hear you talk about like the things you've heard, Janetta, just giving up that portion of money, but really what you're doing is they're going to get you more art and more work. You're just going to be creating more art instead of having to do these other contract bookkeeping and sales stuff. Is that fair?
I'm just gonna say yes and no. I look at it like, if you think about building relationships and if you have a good relationship with a friend, right? The amount that you spend time with that friend is time. And yes, there's bookkeeping, yes, there's sales, yes, there's all these things, but it's actually far more about fostering relationships than it is about and that takes, by the way, years and time. If